All right, so this video might be a little rambly. It might be a little unfocused in parts. I'm not sure if I'm going to add cuts in this video. I'm going to try not to and just keep all my thoughts just in the stream of conscious, one take kind of thing. Because that's kind of the nature of what I wanted to talk about today, and that is folk filmmaking. Folk filmmaking, if you didn't know, if you've seen our channel before, you probably do, but if you haven't and you just stumbled upon this video, folk filmmaking is a newer movement in the filmmaking sphere. It began, I want to say, about 4 years ago. Roughly 2020 is when a lot of folk films started coming out, and it's been growing ever since. And what makes folk filmmaking different, or I guess the tenets of folk filmmaking, if there are tenets. I mean, there's no official movement, there's no official group, but what makes a folk film is it's a feature length film that a filmmaker uploads to YouTube or Amazon or Vimeo for free and just makes it a free online thing for people to access. I can't speak for why everybody started doing this, but why Doom Productions started doing this is for many years we were caught up in um, the doing things the right way in the film industry. I went to film school. My buddies, Ethan and Zach's in film school. Ethan, he didn't go to film school, but he did all my projects with me, so he kind of got bootleg film school. Um, there's a lot of things that they tell you to do in film school. They tell you that there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. And I'm not going to say that film school is right or wrong about how they teach those sort of things necessarily, but what I will say is that it breeds a certain mentality among film students. And for me, it created this way of thinking that there was only one way of doing things. That in order to become successful at filmmaking, or in order to make a feature film, I had to do things the way film school taught me. And I was stuck in that for a long time. And I wasn't really making very interesting work after film school. And I really wasn't making a feature film, which was my goal. And when the pandemic happened, I discovered a couple filmmakers, Cody Clark, Joel Haver, Dan Lotz, and seeing their work online for free inspired me to think to myself, hey, I think I could do this too. I think this, maybe it's not so impossible to make a feature film, that's a whole nother topic entirely. And so I think it was June, Ethan and myself, we challenged each other to make a feature film on our own, and we'd release it that year. And we did. I made Oh Brother, Ethan made House, and we've been making feature films ever since. And it's been a beautiful thing, and it's been a beautiful community, I think. Um, this folk filmmaking, YouTube filmmaking community. And I think it's been really, really cool to see all these other people over time creating feature films and releasing them for free, and to see the variety of different filmmakers and the creativity of all these different filmmakers, and everybody finding each other and feeling like, hey, we're not so alone. There's other people who are doing this too. I think that's been really inspiring. Um, I guess when I say this, I should preface this, or I should put a little note that that's not to say that before 2020 people weren't releasing feature length films on YouTube for free. It's not a wholly original thing. People had been doing it for years, but I think in 2020, 2021, there was a lot of movement behind rallying behind this particular movement of folk filmmaking, whatever that means and everything. And there's a lot of great films you can check out. There's a playlist on the 922 Dan Lotz film channel that you can check out where there's a lot of compiled films. There's a playlist where you can find all the different works that have been made and browse through. That's how we met some of our friends. That's how other people found us. It's been a really cool thing, and I would encourage anybody to check out that playlist and that work. But I think what we're coming to now is there's so many people who are making stuff these days, it's really hard to keep track. I was watching a live stream that Dan Lotz was doing not too long ago, and Dan was talking about how it's really difficult to keep track of everything because everybody is making something new you know, every week, every month, pretty much. There's consistently so many new things that is being produced, and part of it's really inspiring. Part of it's you kind of get lost as a viewer, and I just think it's really inspiring. And I can't remember if it was during the live stream or maybe it was another video I was watching, but I was thinking to myself, what is the future of folk filmmaking? What's going to come out of it? And I don't know. I'm not a historian. I don't study these sort of things and movements and whatnot. I don't know if you classify this as a movement, but I thought it was an interesting question because it's been about 4 years. 2020 was about 4 years ago. I think that's when Chlorine came out. That was a really big film in the folk filmmaking community, in the YouTube community. And, you know, to be honest, not much has changed. Um, I should start by saying, I guess I should also preface by saying that this is all entirely my opinion. Feel free to disagree or have your own thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this too. But I was thinking to myself, what has changed from 2020 to 2024 and what is going to change in the future? What's the future of folk filmmaking, if it is a future? And what I see has changed is there's a community. There's more of a community, I think. Now, in some ways, back then, we've talked about this before, but I felt like there was a tighter community a few years ago because I felt like one by one new filmmakers would pop up and people who are already making feature length films would kind of rally behind that person and discover that person and celebrate that person all together. And it was like a small party, and one by one, new filmmakers would come in, and that happened. From my memory, everything kind of blurs together. But I remember meeting and discovering Merdul Chabur, Ethan Stevens around that year when they had new movies. They'd pop up. They'd pop up. We'd check them out. Low Budget Visions, Matt Berry. That was another, you know, channel that we discovered around that time period. And I'm sorry if I'm leaving anybody out, but there's just too many to mention now. I've made this analogy before, but now this YouTube feature filmmaking community feels kind of like a big party. It started out as kind of like a smaller party, like this house party with just a couple of people, but now there's so many people inside, and it's hard to keep track of everybody. And frankly, I don't know everybody in the community. And that's not to say that Doom Productions or myself, we're like the leaders or we can speak with any authority on this subject because frankly, we're just filmmakers like anybody else. I don't think we have any authority or a greater say than anybody else in the filmmaking community. But yeah, I think there's a lot of people now, and I think that's what's changed between 2020 and now. There's a Discord. I think the term among filmmakers is it's relatively, I wouldn't say it's well known, but more people are aware of it. I think something that's that is kind of trickier too is because there's so many people. It is kind of hard to keep track of everything, but that will happen with anything that gets really popular. But it's not in the common, it's not super well known. I guess I should say this. Folk filmmaking, feature length films on YouTube. I mean, obviously Joel Haver has become very popular in kind of the Reddit online internet sphere. I guess a YouTube celebrity is one way to put it. And there are prominent people who are aware of folk filmmaking. I know there's a couple of bigger YouTubers who are aware of specific films like Chlorine and folk filmmaking in that movement. But there's not, I think if you'd asked me 2020 or in 2021 specifically, what I think would have become a folk filmmaking, I think I would have told you, gee, I really hope that a bigger filmmaker out there would discover the films and discover all the different filmmakers working on YouTube and speak about the work and elevate the work and talk about it and highlight and spotlight certain films that are being made and filmmakers that they like. And that just hasn't happened yet. Um, Not that it has to happen or that I think it should happen, but I think maybe if I keep this realistic, objective, I don't know what you call this. Again, this is all my opinion. I don't quite know how to say this, but to be honest, I don't feel like a lot has changed than a greater community. It's a small community. I mean, it's big compared to what it was, but even in the grand scope of things, we don't have millions and millions of people in this filmmaking community, and that is kind of strange, different, bizarre. I don't know what you call it. I'm not sad about it, but I do wish that there was more attention put on these filmmakers making their stuff and putting it online for free, feature films specifically. I think that you know it's kind of reached a stale or a plateau a little bit, slightly. Last year, I can't remember who was talking about this, but I saw filmmakers say how in 2023, not very many people made feature films and released them online, which is, that's not to say that there weren't any. There were lots of filmmakers that were doing stuff, but compared to previous years, there wasn't a whole lot going on. This year, there's some bigger projects that are set to come out, and that's pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to all of those. But at the same time, I do kind of feel a sense like, gee, is this it? Is this all that's going to happen with folk filmmaking? Is it just going to be, a small internet community that makes feature films and releases them online for free? And, you know, looking forward to the future, what is the future of folk filmmaking? I think, you know, this is purely my thoughts, my opinion. I hope I'm wrong, but I feel to a certain extent, um, I feel that folk filmmaking, these films, which again I should preface, my opinion, I feel like these films that are being made, I hope I'm wrong. I feel like none of these films are gonna be super well known in the lifetime of us, the filmmakers. That's not to say they don't deserve to be well known. That's not to say that these filmmakers aren't deserving of that or that they shouldn't be more popular. But I have this kind of itching feeling that folk filmmaking and the filmmakers who are working today, it's kind of like the fruits of the labor are not going to be seen for a long time, perhaps even after we're dead. I want to talk a little bit about an analogy here, but it is related. I've talked about before on this channel, and I think I'm right about this. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But from my writing classes in college, I remember talking about Emily Dickinson, and Emily Dickinson is a famous poet and author. Of course, everybody knows today. But at the time of her life, all of her writing was done for herself in private. And it wasn't until years later, after she had died, that people discovered her writings and they were published. And today, she's of course known as a great author, a great writer in just the world of writing. And I think that's really cool. And there are a couple of other stories like that in history where a writer will do a lot of work and it's not shown and nobody knows about it, but then the author dies and then it becomes public knowledge about, hey, this person did this, and then they're a celebrated author. Another kind of example is Edgar Degas, the painter, had shown one of his sculptures in public in his during his lifetime, and it wasn't until after his death that people discovered that he had tons of castings and sculptures made in his, I think in his home or his attic, his workspace. I can't remember where it was, but obviously now there's a huge collection of Edgar Degas sculptures that exist, and I've seen them. They're at Washington D.C. and in the museum there, and there's actually a whole lot of other places that show his sculptures. But he's now known as a someone who sculpted as well. But during his lifetime, he wasn't known for that. He was known for his painting. And so a few years ago, sometime in the last few years, I can't remember when, we talked about, or I've talked about how that hasn't happened with filmmaking yet. I don't think. I could be totally wrong, and I'm sure I'm wrong. Cases where filmmakers will create a body of work and die before that work becomes well known, and then after their death, it becomes discovered, and then they are celebrated and they become known as a filmmaker and an artist. I don't think that's happened in filmmaking yet. Um, if I'm wrong, please let me know. I'd love to know if there's any story like this. I mean, the closest thing I can think of is, I guess, media archivists, however you say it. Because there have been cases of people who will religiously tape things on their television, and then after they die, they discover hundreds and thousands of VHS tapes with recordings of television. But they weren't necessarily filmmakers. I guess that was more of archiving sort of thing. But anyways, um, My prediction for folk filmmaking is that I think that in 50 years, 60 years, maybe more, hopefully less, I think that a lot of these films will be discovered by more prominent filmmakers and other people who become well known in the film cinema world, the film industry. I think there exists a great body of work of all these different filmmakers in folk filmmaking to be discovered by people in the future. And once it's there, a lot of filmmakers I think will become household names and well known. But right now, that isn't happening. That hasn't happened yet. And, I've kind of mentally in my head, because you think about the future and everything, and I'm going to turn 30 pretty soon, and you kind of think about the 30 because that's a scary number and the future and everything. And I've kind of thought about, what is my, who am I as an artist, as a filmmaker? What is the future of all this? And to me, I've kind of come to terms, or I guess I've thought about, ideally, I'm okay with, making a whole bunch of films at my level and making a big body of films and work that people can watch and enjoy, for the time being, just our small audience. And then hopefully the audience will grow over time. And I'm okay with not, ever becoming known as a filmmaker. And that sounds very ego. Oh my goodness. Nathan Cash is calling me. Okay, hold on. I'm going to keep this in. I might cut this. I might not, but we'll see. Hello.
Hello, Jordan.
How's it going?
It's going good. Am I calling it a bad time?
No, not at all. I'm actually you might be in a YouTube video right now. I'm not sure. I
Oh,
might cut this.
oh, oh no.
I was doing a recording for our next YouTube video and you called and I might leave some of this in. I might not, but you're
No
good.
bother. What's the YouTube video about by any chance?
The future of folk filmmaking. Do you have any thoughts on the future of that?
Okay, well, you got Nathan and Caleb on the line here. Say hi, Caleb. Hey, buddy. So, hey, we won't talk about much. We were about to reveal about a lot of little black submarines things now, but I'll be very vague about it. Well, the biggest, sorry, this is off topic, but the biggest thing about folk filmmaking right now is that it's still collaboration, man. Collaboration is the way, man. I don't know. All right, Jordan, I'll let you finish up with your video before I make it any more awkward.
Okay. Okay, thanks. I appreciate the call.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, talk later.
See ya. What good timing. What funny timing. What was where was I? Anyways, I think that folk filmmaking, the films that are being made by folk filmmakers, I think they're going to be discovered in the future. And I think that a lot of us are going to be either very old or maybe not alive when a lot of our work becomes well known to the public and other people. And I hope I'm wrong. I think it'd be really cool if more people got to see that in real time. I think that'd be awesome. But I think that's my prediction. I think that in 50 years, in a long time, if you assuming YouTube is still around and archiving our films is another topic entirely. I feel like in 50 years, I think people are going to discover the folk films and the filmmakers who are making folk films. And I think it's going to become well known after that. Maybe it's not, but that's my prediction, and maybe it'll happen sooner. But that's kind of my gut feeling as of now. And in a way, how this helps me and how this affects me as a filmmaker is that it helps me not worry about the audience too much. Because I think if we were to skyrocket into fame and fortune and all that kind of ridiculous nonsense, I think that would influence for sure how we are making stuff. But I think for me as a filmmaker, I take a lot of solace and it gives me comfort to know that I'm making this stuff just for me. I'm making films because I love doing it. I'm making movies because this is what I'm good at. This is what I like to do, and I don't really worry about the audience too much. As Nathan said in that thing, I think collaboration is really important for keeping people involved and keeping a good audience. I think that's a key thing, and I think that we can just do what I can, but there's a thing as there's a right place, right time, right audience. I think those are the three important things in terms of anything becoming popular and having an impact. And I think folk filmmaking, you know, one day the stars will align and people will discover the films. And that's the cool thing about the way we're making and releasing these movies is that there isn't just this limited theatrical window where the movie is released and then kind of disappears, or it doesn't go on streaming and then maybe Netflix pulls it one day. It can exist online forever, and I think that's a really cool thing. So, we're doing all this work and we're getting this body of work prepared and we're making the stuff, and there's all these films that are cataloged, and one day the right person is going to discover it, and that's when I guess the fruits of everybody's labors will be known to the world, and I think that's really cool. And it kind of made me think about another movie in particular around these kind of questions. I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Yesterday. Yesterday is a Danny Boyle movie. It's kind of like a romantic fantasy comedy about this guy, this musician, who after he gets into a bus accident and there's this citywide or worldwide blackout, and when he wakes up from the accident no one remembers who the Beatles is. So what he starts doing is he starts making he starts ripping off Beatles songs because no one remembers who the Beatles are. And it plays out that kind of what if situation, which I think if you're an I think it's a really fun movie, but I think you get a lot more out of it if you're an artist and you're um, filmmaker or musician or whatever you are, because I think it raises some really interesting questions that are relevant to our time right now in folk filmmaking and just the democratization of art in general these days. Um, I think one of the important questions is that Yesterday the movie asks is if you're because obviously the Beatles are considered the greatest rock band, the greatest band of all time, and not everybody agrees with that, but I think what it does is it uses that shorthand to quickly convey to us, the audience, that this musician, the main character in the film, he believes the Beatles are the greatest band of all time. And what's an important distinction there is that there is an artist, this artist in the film, he's creating the greatest art ever made. And the question, because to him, right, the Beatles are God, Beatles are bigger than God. So it's not so much, take your personal opinion of the Beatles aside. Look at the film as there is a artist who's making the greatest art of all time, to him anyways. But it asks the question, if nobody sees your art, if you're creating the greatest art of all time and nobody sees it, does it still matter? And it also asks if great works of art like the Beatles were making music today, would people still care, or would it be caught up in the you know the differences in our time, or is the world just too different now that it wouldn't appreciate the greatest art of all time, whether you agree or disagree with that. um and made me think about that, and I think the movie has a lot of interesting things to say about that when you look at the movie through the lens of personally relating to this artist, the main character of this guy who's struggling to make ends meet, and he's creating music and work that he believes is the greatest of all time, and asking yourself, do people care? Do people care for the right reasons? Will it get muddied? Will it get ruined by commerce and capitalism? What happens if you're making really important art? I mean, it's that age old question: if a tree falls in the middle of the woods, does it still make a sound? Right? If you make the greatest film of all time and nobody sees it, does it still matter? I think these are interesting questions, and I think where I've kind of fallen on in answering that question for me, I kind of feel like I'm a filmmaker. That's what I do. I don't care if I ever get famous. I don't care if I mean, I would like to make money off of my movies, but I frankly don't care. I'm making this art for me because I like to do it, and I want to entertain people, and every single person who gives my movie a shot is a victory in my head. That's a win of just if just one person can see my movie and be entertained, that's enough for me. And I think if you go into making art that way, it's a lot more rewarding than worrying about what people will think about your movies and being famous and rich and all that kind of thing, which of course that's important to some people. I would like the money, I don't want the fame, but yeah, I think those are my rambling thoughts on folk filmmaking right now at the moment. Um, One thing that I've talked with Ethan and Zach about here on Doom Productions, and we're asking ourselves, what can we do to help foster that community? How can we help other filmmakers out? Because we're not a huge YouTube channel, but we do have an audience, a small audience, and I think it'd be really nice to actively elevate other filmmakers who are starting out and other works And so something that I'm an official promise, I guess I would like to make to everybody, which we've made before, but it's been very hard with the chaos of everyday life, is if you have made a feature-length film and it's on YouTube, I would like you to email us info@doomproductions.net. Send us a link to your film. In the subject line, put folk filmmaker as a subject line so we know, because what something we would like to do on this channel is to start spotlighting other feature films that people have made that aren't our own, and films that we can talk about and we can discuss and hopefully try to somewhat create more of a community. Not like we're that important or anything, but I think it'd be a fun thing to do to maybe talk about other filmmakers and their work. So if you've made a feature film and we haven't seen it, even if you have sent us this movie before, but you don't think we've seen it, because I know we've gotten a lot of people who've sent us stuff, send us your movie, info@doomproductions.net, with the subject line just saying folk filmmaker. And promise we will get through that list. We're going to watch all those movies and we're going to try to talk about hopefully one movie a month at least. I would love to do one movie a week. That would be our goal, but depending on how much time we all have, that might not be possible. So please send us your movie because, like I said, there's been a lot of improvements made, or there's been a lot of change made the last few years in the folk filmmaking community. We would like to make more change and try to elevate other filmmakers and spotlight other filmmakers and films that we think are really cool and that we've seen. So, yeah, please send us your movie. And if you have never seen any of our movies, please check them out. We got a playlist on our channel. And yeah, the more people we have sharing and watching each other's stuff, I think the more successful our films will all be as a community. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you on the next video.